Welcome to my Perfume Museum, and today I'll be giving you a tour of my favorite house, and of course it's the biggest of all the houses. Let me start with one of the few modern scents from this house that I own, called Insolence. This came out in 2006 and it has notes of raspberry, violet. It has a very candied feel about it. It was inspired by a much earlier gourmand perfume released in 1912 called Le Bleu. The distinctive flacon called the Bouchon Coeur, or upside down heart shaped stopper flacon, was designed for this very fragrance, and it was composed by Jacques Guerlain to encapsulate the blue hour, which is the time between dusk and nightfall. Very evocative. They even did a modern rendition of this for Shalimar. This is a limited edition of Shalimar in the Bouchon Coeur. Shalimar is a scent that we'll go on to later. Then 7 years later, Guerlain came up with Mitsouko, which is now considered a legendary Chypre fragrance. This has a very interesting and mysterious vibe about it. It has notes of peach and forest and woody overtones. I also have larger bottles of Mitsouko. This is an older one, and this is the 2-ounce size, and another one which is still sealed with the strings, except that it has evaporated most of its contents. And I have an even older bottle of Mitsouko, which dates from the late 1940s. Very dark juice and very interesting to sniff. 6 years later, the most important fragrance for this house debuted, and it was of course Shalimar. This is the 1-ounce size from the 1970s, and I have a larger size, the 2.5-ounce size, which I bought from England for £67. It's a very leathery kind of, dirty as in very sensual, and it has a very strong and distinctive vanilla incense kind of vibe about it. This is one of the trophies of my collection. The newer versions of Shalimar are much tamer. This is a limited edition Eau de Parfum from 1998. The quality of the bottles used to be very high indeed. They were all made by Baccarat Cristaleries, or Baccarat, and this is the largest size they ever made. It used to contain 8 ounces of the parfum, and it's about 8 inches tall. Let's talk about the box now. Guerlain has a very distinctive box with a design that is still used today, as you can see in this example. The older boxes, I think this is from the 1930s or 40s, has a slightly different font, as you can see, and because of its age, this is a bit battered, but they used to make it from wood. Now they make it all from paper. Okay, let's see. There were some offshoots from Shalimar, and one of them came out in 2007. This was actually Jean-Paul Guerlain's version called Shalimar Light. This is one of my favorite offshoots from the grandmother. In the 1930s, during the Great Depression, Guerlain also issued fragrances. One of the most important was Vol de Nuit, or Night Flight, and I also have the larger 2.5-ounce bottle in the distinctive zebra box. Those that I've shown you are mainly the X-ray concentrations, and they made smaller sizes to make it more affordable. This was one of them in the 15mm size called the Rosebud Amphora. This is for Shalimar, and it's still sealed. This one is unsealed, and it was for Le Bleu. In the 1920s, when Shalimar was reigning supreme, Jacques Guerlain composed some more obscure fragrances that have now become very rare, and one of these is the JD, and it is made by Baccarat, just like most of the bottles that I showed you just now. Even earlier than L'air Bleu, there was actually a fragrance called Rue de la Paix, Street of Peace. This particular flacon, called the Quadrilobe, was actually designed for this fragrance, but it was soon used for the extrays of most other fragrances from this house, including Jicky, their seminal Fougère. When Jacques Guerlain passed away in 1963, Jean-Paul Guerlain, his grandson, took over as master perfumer, and he composed some very memorable indeed, including this one, in his own distinctive flacon to represent a Florentine vase called Chant d'Arôme. This is a very light fragrance that departed from the dark classics like Shalimar and Mitsouko, and it has a distinctive pink and green box. This is actually the smaller flacon of Chant d'Arôme with some extrays still left. He also composed another fragrance called Chamade, which is one of the most complex fragrances that is almost a must-study for budding perfumers. This is a green floral chypre. One of the very first fragrances from this house actually came in what is called the B bottle. So I have an example of the modern B bottle that you see nowadays. This is for Chant d'Arôme, the eau de toilette, and the very first fragrance that really made it big for this house during the time of the founder Jean-Francois Pascal is actually Eau de Cologne Impériale. This is the 8-ounce size. You can see all the bees embossed on the bottle. Jean-Paul Guerlain also composed another green fragrance in 1974 called Parure in this distinctive flacon, also only made to contain the extrays of Parure. The more exclusive in this house now come almost exclusively in the B bottles, and this is their new packaging in a gold tone kind of box, and this is for the fragrance Liu, the eau de parfum concentration. Very nice packaging, but very expensive. Speaking about packaging, I did mention the distinctive box that belongs to this house. Earlier boxes that came from the 60s and 70s have this zigzag pattern, as you can see, and this golden 60s label, and they used it for all their outer boxes, right? Like this is the box for the eau de cologne of L'air Bleu. In the 80s, they switched to a gold and black box, like this example for the eau de toilette of Mitsouko, and they also used this into the early 2000s. For their eau de colognes, they even developed a special flacon called the flacon montre, or watch flacon. This is one for the eau de cologne of Shalimar, now discontinued. This is Mitsouko, and the one I showed you actually was for L'air Bleu, and here it is. At the turn of the millennium, Guerlain was sold to LVMH, so they created a special container for the eau de toilette. This is the 3.1 ounce, and it's called the Habit de Fête. Another type of flacon that is very recognizable called the flacon goutte, which has this sea urchin or seashell kind of stopper. This is for Cuir de Russie, and I have a few of these. Around the time that the Habit de Fête container came out, Guerlain did a special limited edition composed by Mathilde Laurent in the classic lantern flacon, which Jacques Guerlain made for one of his first fragrances called Ambre or Amber. This is the lantern flacon, and this is for the fragrance Guet-apens. Okay, I think that completes the picture that I want to share with you. Thank you very much for watching.